At the end of the day, both buyer and seller want professional representation, and they'll need to compensate their agents for that representation. In most of the scenarios we reviewed, the end results will be very close to the end result we saw in the past. But the optics, the semantics, and the mechanics of the process are what's changed. The reason for this change is to clarify and simplify what is happening so that all parties understand. This brings me to the final big change that is happening that we need to review. This has to do with advertising of offers of buyer compensation. And again, I think I mentioned it earlier, but in the past, when a listing agent took a listing, they negotiated their full fee with the understanding that they would be sharing a portion with the agent who brought the buyer. At that time, in the past, agents utilized technology platforms called MLS, or multiple listing services, to advertise the property and to advertise what they stated they were sharing in terms of buyer agent compensation. Now, there's much more than just that on the MLS, including market data, sold properties, new listed properties, average prices, average days on market, etc. Only licensed agents have access to the MLS, and this data really helps us advise our consumers. Anyway, in the past, the listing agent would list what they were offering to the buyer agent so that all the agents in the marketplace could see the amount and advise their buyer clients on how best to structure their offer moving forward. For example, if they needed some additional concessions to cover the cost of the agent's compensation, etc., things like that. And that's what I have here. So we used to take the listing agent, had the house, they put it on the MLS, $20K for them, $10K to whoever brought the buyer, was listed on the MLS, and all the agents could see this. This was called cooperating compensation, broker to broker. Going forward, we are prohibited. We are no longer allowed to advertise buyer agent compensation on the MLS. The field has been removed. It's gone. This means that neither the buyer or their agent will be fully aware of if or how much the seller is willing to contribute to the buyer agent's fee. Now remember, we're still trying to arrive at the same destination: representation for both buyer and seller, and compensation for the agents doing the representing. It is possible that sellers will continue to offer to pay. So there's a couple scenarios of how we get to that place. There's no offers of buyer agent commission on the MLS, but it is possible that sellers will continue to offer to pay a specific amount towards buyer agent fees. It will no longer be on the MLS, but it can be advertised in other ways, such as broker websites, emails, social media, etc. Now, that's a strategy. It could be it would have to be a strategy that the seller and the listing agent agree to. It should be outlined in their listing agreement, and it's essential that this be seller-directed compensation rather than cooperating compensation. But you can articulate a specific amount if that's what you want to do. In some cases, in my opinion, most cases, it would be a better strategy to not advertise a specific amount, but to allow buyers to request compensation within their offers. It's important that sellers understand the nuances of offering a specific amount versus allowing buyers to make their individual requests. I think it would be better to let the buyers make their individual requests, and let's talk about how that would actually work. So let's say you're a buyer and you've entered into your buyer agency agreement with your agent. Now you want to submit an offer on the house. There's two philosophical components now to your offer on the house. There's the terms of the purchase of the house These include things like the cash, the sale price, the loan amount. Maybe there's contingency periods. Do you want the washer dryer, et cetera, et cetera. These are normal. They've always been in the purchase and sales. But now the offer is also going to include a request of the seller for the buyer agent compensation. This offer is going to be packaged and presented by the buyer's agent to the listing agent. Here are the terms of the offer. It also includes a request for buyer agency compensation. Now the buyer agency compensation is part of the terms of the offer, and it's negotiated just like anything else in the terms. Just like the closing date, just like leaving that washer and dryer, it becomes part of the negotiation process. And this is going to require buyer agents to properly educate their buyers on how to make their offer look attractive to the sellers and also meet their obligation of compensating their agent. It's also going to require some additional work on the part of the listing agents, because they're going to, in the event that you have a multiple offer situation, you're really going to have to be able to articulate to your seller the pluses and minuses and create a net sheet for what they're really taking away, because it won't be as simple as just list price anymore. You'll have to look at concessions. You'll have to look at the requests for buyer agency compensation. The whole idea of these practice changes are to allow for better negotiating leverage and more transparency within the process for both buyer and sellers.